And we live. Cheers.
I like this local cider.
It's a good one. I think it was there was a fundraiser event that was happening at Bottega, and Iron came upstairs and he had like 3 or 4 glasses. Like we were done and we were tearing down.
Yeah.
Jesse was playing that night actually. And he came up with like 3 or 4 glasses, and one of them looked like it was like a foggy day. One of them looked like it was clear white wine, but they both tasted almost the same. It was like slight variations of different like filtrations of this cider.
When they
And he's
were
like, "Oh,
figuring
try
it
this out!" Like they were
Ah.
still working it out. This is back
Yeah.
before they actually opened up. I think maybe like a year before or so.
Yeah.
And like ever since then, I've just loved this. I didn't like cider before, but this changed my mind.
Yeah. I can remember trying a few of the prototype versions as well. Yeah.
Yeah,
But I think they got it right now, haven't they?
yeah, they do, and they keeps on changing like a little bit, like from batch to batch. It's like, oh, this is like a little bit sweeter,
Yeah.
or like this right now is a little bit less sweet than I remember it being.
Yeah, which I like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I come from England, so you have to like cider.
Okay, Wales. I'm always mixing this up. Can you help me understand what is like the different like because like there's the United Kingdom, there's Great Britain, there's like all these different like
Yeah.
what is it?
Well, the United Kingdom is Scotland, England, Northern Ireland, and Wales. So that's what's the United Kingdom. And Ireland and Ire, EIRE, they used to be one, but then they separated. So now there's the Republic of Ireland, which is the south, and the north is still part of Britain.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it's all down to Henry VIII, really. You have to go back that far to figure it all out. It's a long history.
Yeah, it's an old country. Old countries.
Yeah, but that's the thing. So I grew up I was born in England near London, a place called Colchester, and then when I was about 11, I think we moved to Wales, and that's where I grew up as a teenager and all that, and got into loads of trouble. Wales is a good place to get in trouble.
So where do you say that you're from then? Like if you were born in England but raised in Wales, and until what age? Like when did you move here?
I moved here in 1998, so I don't know. That was a while ago. I can't do the math very good to figure it all out. No, but where I come from, that's always a hard one because I was born in England, and if you were born in England, Welsh people would always say, well, you're not Welsh. So even if you feel like you are, because I feel like in many ways that I do have quite an affinity with Wales because I grew up there and I love Wales, but I'll never be a Welshman to people there. Like they're very, very, I don't know, proud of the fact that you're Welsh. And in fact, sometimes there was a big thing because there wasn't a hospital in our town that could actually do births. And so people would have to go across the border into England to have their babies, and it was a big deal because now you're not Welsh anymore.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was a big one.
So how many people would have like births at home?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure because we weren't in that category at that time when that was all going on, but it was a big deal. So, yeah, I don't know how they resolved that. I don't know if they did because there just wasn't a maternity ward in the hospital anymore. So.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, so it's a big deal. Yeah.
So you're from there, but I really relate to you with the whole like born in one place, raised in another.
Yeah.
Like that was my life. I moved to the Middle East and I was not even 4 years old. So
yeah.
I and then left there when I was 19. So I come back here and I'm barely Canadian. Like I'm Canadian by passport, but not in any of like the things that make Canadians stereotypically or traditionally Canadian.
Yeah.
Like all the traditions, all like that stuff is just lost over the years. Like when you're somewhere else for
really
more than a
hard one,
decade, you can't
yeah.
really bring it with you.
Yeah, I have a friend and he he grew up in Spain, and so he feels absolutely Spanish, but he's got a Canadian accent, and you'd think he was Canadian, but he thinks of himself as Spanish. So it is just a really hard one, isn't it? When you grew up in a place where you feel like you're part of that country, but you're not really.
Yeah, Kuwait was different because it was mostly foreigners. So the foreigners would all band together and kind of like exchange, like, hey, like, what makes you different? Let's hear about your different thing. Let's hear about your different thing. Like, we're all so different that we were like the same and that we were all different.
Yeah.
But then there's other places where like, Canadian in Spain and feels like he's local, but everyone local is like, where are you from?
It's funny in Wales though. If you live there a while, like I lived there quite a while, and then kind of grew up with all my friends and whatever there. Well, after a while, they do kind of accept you as, you're in kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and you're never really Welsh, but you're kind of you're in, but yeah, it's really interesting. But like it's especially hard if there's a rugby game or something.
Oh,
and,
no.
And you're like, well, who do you support? Because
the only thing I
kind of
know
support
about
Wales then.
like rugby and football or soccer for Canadians, all I hear about in the UK is like the stands just get destroyed at every game.
Not really. But it's that definitely was something in the past. I don't think it happens quite so much now, but I mean it certainly hasn't happened for a year.
That's true.
No, but
just a lot of broken TVs, people chucking beer cans at the screen when their team loses.
it was hairy though. Like I remember going to a Wales international game. So Wales were playing Austria in I think it was in Wrexham, which is a town in Wales. So at the game, everyone's there to support Wales, but then you get these factions as well. You've got Cardiff fans and Swansea fans and Wrexham fans all in the same stand, and a huge fight broke out at the Wales game. It was just like ridiculous because it was, and I tell you that was scary to be in that. Like I was a youngster at the time, and it's really because there's nowhere to flee.
Right, you're stuck in a crowd.
Anywhere. Yeah, you just have to fight. Everyone, you just fight for yourself to try and keep yourself.
There's no one sitting
alive.
there going, hang on. Why are we fighting?
I know.
It's over there. Those guys started it.
And the hard thing is, people did die in those kind of things, in Britain as well, which is really tough, So so that was weird. You'd think we'd all be cheering for the same country, but the factions were all there. Yeah, it was really strange.
Yeah, sports are a little bit different. Like sports are one of those things like everyone who's not into sports doesn't get it. The people who are into sports, like your sport makes sense. Like, of course I'm going to be angry about this. But then like you pick a different sport that you're not into. It's like, I don't get that. Like people who are golfers are hardcore golfers.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't understand hockey. And like hockey players who are really into hockey, it's like, what's the big deal about football?
Yeah. I can remember when I first moved here from the UK. So football, soccer was my big thing, And then we moved here. And someone said, you have to go and see a hockey game because it's like so cool, So I went to see the Vancouver Canucks, and they played the Edmonton Oilers, right, which apparently was meant to be this big, incredible game. And I forget who won, but it was like 9-0 or something silly like that. It was the most worst game you've ever seen in your life, right? And I remember saying to my friend, and this is like the game that they play in Canada, and he's going, it's better than this normally, And I'm like, it's terrible, Anyway, that was my impression. And then I got to go to a playoff game with Vancouver against the Red Wings. And then I saw a real game, And I was like, now I get it. It's like, whoa. And but even that, the Red Wings went up 3 goals. So they were going into the third period and they're 3-0 up, right? And again, I'm thinking, this is such a bad game. I spent all this money to go and see this game, but then Vancouver came back at them in the last period, and it was 3-3, and then the Red Wings went on to win in overtime, which didn't even matter because the game was so amazing, you know. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, oh, now I get it, you know.
It's something special. Like, I've only actually been to one NHL game, and I had the absolute worst possible seat. I was the last row in the uppermost balcony in the Rogers Arena in Vancouver. It was like a last minute, like I got like a ticket off some app that like resells like discounted extra tickets. No. So it was pretty cheap. And I just happened to be there that day. And it was Vancouver versus Vegas.
Oh, yeah.
And Vegas won, but I never in my life have been like super excited about like a game, and I was the asshole up on a chair screaming. And I was there on my own, like not my own moment, but like my friends were like 2 sections over,
right? Yeah,
because they got like the same like cheap seat app thing. I was like, oh, this is cool. Let's just go see a game.
You got into the passion of it all. Yeah.
I just felt like the energy of the room.
Yeah,
and it was really exciting to be in the middle of that because like everyone else is stoked, and I could barely follow where the puck was. I could only tell by like the big jumbotron thing.
I must admit I found it a bit hard to know because I didn't know the rules. Right, I'm coming from England. I'm like, what is going on in this game? Like, the guys are only on there for 30 seconds and then they're coming off again. I just had no idea. Anyway, I got the idea after a while. But you know, when I was a kid growing up in England, we used to go to these soccer games, and you could run on the pitch in those days at the end, you know. Well, the kids did, not everyone, but, you know, so I was a little, I don't know, 9, 10-year-old, whatever, and you literally you were allowed to run on the pitch at the end and pat all the stars on the back, and they would, all right, son, and all that, you know. So, it was so good. You know, you felt such a connection with everything. You're not allowed to do that anymore because of, you know, all the violence that happened in years later. But in those times, it was really innocent. You know, just kids running on there and all meeting the stars and stuff. You know, it's so good. So yeah, I got to meet some of my heroes like that. You know, on the field. You know, and then you dream about, make up stories of all the things that they actually said to you, which they didn't. You know, they just said, "All right, son," or something like that. But it was like such a big deal. You know.
Like you tell a story and they sat you down, they looked you square in the eye, they dropped down to one knee, they put their hand on your shoulder, and they gave you this epiphany moment where it was like a 10-minute speech, and afterwards like your eyes were crying and they were beaming, and he looked at and he stood up, looked down at you and said, "You're gonna make it." And he had this epic thing, and he turned away and birds took off behind him as he walked back to join his team, and your friends are like, "Wow, that was an amazing experience." And then you see like someone else recorded it and he's like, "Dude, get away from me."
See, that's uncanny that you would know that, because that is exactly what happened.
I didn't know.
Yeah, but it was in your mind. It was a bit like that. Yeah, it was great though. Yeah, it was good stuff though. But I can remember because we were just kids, and at those days there was no seats in the stadium. Everyone stood up, right? The whole stadium. So the kids you had to take something to stand on. So my mum used to take, remember the old sewing machines had the big wooden box on it, and my mum would lift the top off the sewing machine, and she'd take it to the ground, and we would, the kids would stand on that, like so we could see.
Oh, you're the right age. That's a bench for 2.
Yeah, it was just great, So yeah, that's how I became a singer. As a joke.
Oh my God. That is a good segue though. Because I'm actually curious about what was the music scene like when you were getting started in the UK, and how is it different now? Because like all I know now is all stuff that I can see like online from what other people choose to share, and I honestly have not a clue about what the music scene is like. And like, is it different in like suburb areas versus like big cities?
Right. Yeah.
What is it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like growing up in Wales, right? It was a small town where I grew up. It was just a really small place. So it's very usual, the grassroots level music when you're in the UK. I mean, bearing in mind I have been away for a while now, but what it used to be like then was, there would be the youth club. You play in the youth club with your band and that, and then there would be a few kind of youth coffee shop type places, that were not like coffee shops here. It would be more like they might have table tennis and stuff like that. They're more for kids and stuff. So a bit different to here. They wouldn't be licensed and stuff like that. So like kids could go, and then there'd be the school stuff and all that as well. So there would be your grassroots stuff. And then the next thing up from there would be like the colleges and universities. So that would be a whole another scene where you get into the university scene and play on that scene. Pubs and clubs and all that kind of stuff would be another kind of part of that as well. Usually the university scene would be a bit of one up from playing in the pub scene, because there was, the gigs were better and a lot more people and, bigger venues and stuff like that. So, and then, from there, obviously it'd be like any other place where there's, the whole theatre thing and people playing in theatres or bigger venues and stadiums and all that kind of stuff, So, but what was really healthy when I was a youngster was that there was a scene for kids to play, and that's one thing that I really see now is missing, that there aren't really many venues for young kids to play. I'm talking about, like kids who are 12, 13, whatever, that age, when you first get going. There's not really many places like that now for kids to really explore and be really bad but get better, and so that was something that was very healthy there. The youth, what we call the youth club scene, so like our youth club, there were several youth clubs in our town, and they all had like gigs that would happen there, and they were really, and you just played for the other kids, it was really good. And looking back, we were probably terrible, but that's where you start, And then like for me, because my dad was a musician growing up, so me and my brother, we kind of probably showed the most interest in playing live and stuff. So he was 12 and I was about 15 or something like that. And then my dad would take us to the clubs where he'd be playing, and we would kind of like do a little set in the middle of one of his breaks or something, and do 2 or 3 songs and stuff, Yeah, so you'd learn how to play, in front of, this would be with adults in a bar, like situation, so it'd be a totally different thing. And they would be forgiving because you're kids and that, just starting, but it was a really great place to learn how to play and stuff, and then, then you're kind of on your own then. And the other thing that's really great about Britain is the close proximity of all the gigs, so every town is only like where we lived in, say, like when I moved to North London, where we lived there, you could literally play, well, we used to play about 5 nights a week, every week, right? And we would just have a circuit of gigs that you go around, And there's so many of them because all the towns are so close to each other, so every town has 2 or 3 gigs, and so you literally just go around that area, and you play this, what would be a circuit. So there'd be a blues circuit, or there's country circuit, or there's, whatever. So that, we just had so many gigs, it's not like here in Canada where the distances are so massive,
Yeah, the drive from me to my closest sibling is almost the drive across the UK.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, here to Calgary is like 6 to 7 hours. And
yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if you can drive in a straight direction for more than 9 hours in the UK, like top to bottom. I think it's something like 8 or 9 hours.
Yeah.
Like in good traffic.
Yeah. Be about 12 hours usually. But yeah, that thing of distance is one of the reasons why the music scene I think is so good there. It's probably similar to if you go in Eastern Canada. It's similar, right? Because in the Toronto area, there's a lot more gigs in a closer proximity to the city than there is in Vancouver, for instance. Seattle is 2 hours away, 2.5 hours away, or something like that from Vancouver.
Something like that, yeah.
You know, and then the next big town is Calgary. You know, which is what's that, 8 hours away or something from Vancouver.
At least, yeah.
Yeah, even more. So that makes it a lot harder for bands. You know, whereas in the UK, that really was a great thing, and I found that very difficult here. You know, like I'd never flown to a gig when I lived there, ever. Like, you know what I mean? And then you move here and you can't not fly to gigs. Like, it's like, you know, if you're travelling around and playing and that, you know, you always get on planes, you know. To figure out how to get all this gear on a plane now, you know, like, and all that, you know.
Right, before it was like load up the van, throw the amps in the back, chuck the Leslie speaker in the back.
Yeah. I mean, that's funny you should say that, because I do remember I played in one band and we had a organ player, and he had to have his trailer, you know, just for the organ, you know, in the back. And I can remember trying to cart it upstairs and stuff. Oh, it was terrible. Like, you know. Thank God they made that Nord thing or whatever it is now, you know.
Yeah, between keyboard players and bassists, that was like half the gear. Now that's just the drummer.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what's that? Ampeg as well. Remember those, like a fridge?
Oh, yeah, the fridge speakers, the 8x10.
Yeah.
Oh, man. They've only recently finally died out.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get around that amount of air they move. Like, just having that huge speaker shaking the ground, it's pretty cool. Like, you kind of have to have, like, a sub in the venue if you're going to get around that.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, those speakers are just awful in terms of, like, loading in and out, getting up and down stairs.
Oh,
it's like the challenge of how coordinated you are as a team.
Yeah. You have to get a chiropractor to sort you out before you can do the gig.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, but it's good. It's, you know, so yeah, that was the scene in the UK when I was young, starting out. You know, and
who that you saw there did you want to be like?
Oh, when I was a kid, well, I'll tell you what happened. I became really involved with music at the same time as the punk explosion thing happened as well, right? So punk music made it so good for kids, you know, because you could be crap, like, you know what I mean? And as long as you spat on people and stuff and smashed your guitar up at the end, you just went down brilliant, like, you know, like, so it was so good, you know. So when I saw, I mean, I can remember getting Nevermind the Bollocks, you know what I mean, here's the Sex Pistols, like getting that album, you know, for the first time and putting it on. And it was my dad, me, my brothers, we put that thing on and cranked it up, and I just couldn't believe how amazing it was, you know. I was like, oh my goodness, this is like so good. This is like, you know, rock and roll. And so there was a lot of bands in that time, but when I was a youngster, I used to love Mark Bolan, like from T-Rex, you know. Okay. He was amazing. A lot of those kind of teen kind of stuff, you know, that I liked when I was a kid. And then I liked heavy rock, Deep Purple and all that kind of stuff. Well, it's called heavy rock now. Nowadays it's not that heavy rock, but at that time. So I remember going to see Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, you know, all those kind of bands, go and watch them live, and that was incredible. You know, it had a huge influence on me. So this was pre the punk thing, and then the punk thing happened, and it made it accessible because you didn't have to be as good as Ritchie Blackmore. You know, you could just thrash the guitar around and whatever and spit on people. So yeah, that gave us a bit of hope. So our first band when we were kids doing those youth clubs and that was doing that kind of music, you know, and then we kind of progressed into different things, and then there was a phase called the New Romantic stage. I don't know if you remember. Probably all this is before your time.
Well, so here's the thing: is not only was it before my time, but worse than that, I never really got exposure to it when it was in my time.
Oh, okay.
Because like my parents didn't really actively bring me to new music. My older brothers, they'd be chasing all the new music, but they're 6 and 8 years older than me, so I was the annoying little brother that would never like get out, we're go play with your young friends. We're gonna go and hang out with our friends. And so I didn't really get much music exposure until like my mid-teenage years. Prior to that, actually, I bought my first iPod with the first part-time job I got one summertime. And my brother said, okay, here, give it to me for a second. I was like, okay. And he loads it up with like 20,000 something songs.
Great.
Because he had, like, this was back when like you had to have all your own music on your computer or like in CDs.
Yeah, that's right,
And my brother would categorize his music by year, not by artist.
Right.
And he knew every artist and every album and everything. That, like, he'd heard all of it at least once. He actually made it a goal in, I think it was 2008, to listen to nothing but, and only once each, nothing but albums that came out in 2008. And it extended into like 3 or 4 months into 2009. He'd heard like several hundred albums. And he would log them all and like add them to like his music database. So he had this huge collection of music. And so it's like, here's a bunch of stuff you're going to like. And at the time, we'd gone down to visit him. And it was like a long road trip, like from Ontario down through the States, down to Minnesota and back up. So we had a lot of time in the car for me to just check out music. And I went from like not being interested in listening to music to all of a sudden like I have like 50 new favorite bands. So like that was when I suddenly was introduced to music. But prior to that, I just missed all of it.
Oh, man. Yeah. See, I was fortunate because not only was my father a professional musician, but I had 2 brothers and a sister, and they were all really into music as well. So our record collection jointly was like hundreds of albums, like, you know, like just from everything from Captain Beefheart and Frank Zappa and all that to, you know, orchestral maneuvers in the dark and Ultravox or whatever, like everything in between. It was just like everything was in this huge music collection. And so I always had a really wide range of stuff to listen to, you know. That's why it's hard to say who influenced me, because it's kind of like, man, there were so many people. There's a few guitar players that I really liked a lot. Like I really liked Albert Lee from, he was in a band called Heads, Hands and Feet, and then he later on went to be Emmylou Harris's guitar player and all that, you know, but incredible guitar player. And he influenced me a lot when I was a youngster. I tried to play these licks and stuff that he could play, and I couldn't, but I tried, you know, but he's absolutely amazing. And then there was a guitar player called Tom Velaine who I really liked from a band called Television. I don't know if you've heard them.
I think I've heard of them. I don't know if I'm familiar with them.
Again, he was a really unusual guitar player because he wasn't very conventional. You know, he would make the guitar sound really strange, you know, and I really liked the originality of it. And then I also liked Roxy Music, the early Roxy Music stuff, you know, with Brian Eno and what was the guitar player's name? It's gone out of my mind now, but again, his ambition was to make the guitar not sound like a guitar. That was his kind of like whole thing, and it was really cool, you know. So when you hear Brian Eno now, you know, with U2 and all this stuff, it's like you really see where his roots are in that kind of music, you know, right in the, if you listen to that first Roxy Music album, it's so original, it's incredible. And so yeah, he really influenced me a lot as well. So they're pretty wide ranging things. And then of course all the old blues music that my dad first put me in touch with, you know. I don't know if I ever told you this, but my dad came in my bedroom one day and he said, I was trying to learn the guitar, you know, and he said, if you want to learn the guitar, you've got to learn this, right? And he gave me this record, and it was a Muddy Waters record, all the chess sessions from about 1935 or somewhere around there, somewhere in that kind of place. I forget exactly, but and my dad had written on the record, to Graham, lots of love from Muddy, right? And I honestly thought it was a real signature from Muddy Waters. And I was like, so I can remember, putting that record on, the old vinyl, and I just couldn't believe how good it sounded, as a kid, like to hear Muddy Waters, like with these.
He didn't play a lot of conventional instruments every time, did he? Like,
well,
he would kind of make use of a lot of
yeah,
non-instruments.
Well, I mean, I think mainly Muddy Waters played his Telecaster, and then there's a guy called Little Walter who played the harmonica, and Little Walter played all these incredible riffs that have really become guitar riffs. Everyone who, if you've ever studied blues music, a lot of the little guitar tags are actually harmonica lines that they stole from people like Little Walter. So I remember as a kid, learning these, it's like, it sounds like a guitar line, but it's a harmonica doing it,
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
It's really interesting. So yeah, I learned a lot from hearing that original, really old blues music, before it, just kind of conventional, early blues music, I really learned a lot from that as well, so yeah, I've always had a wide influence of different types of music. So in some ways it's been a difficult thing because it's meant I've never really majored on any one particular style either. People, what kind of thing do you do? And it's like, well, I like all kinds of stuff. I've never really just set myself into one category really.
Do you have any formal training ever, like with music, or is it all kind of you just learned like on your own from other people, other musicians?
Yeah, most of it is just picking it up. I did go to I had music lessons with like one of my old school teachers when I was a kid growing up. He was actually the pottery teacher at the school, but he was really cool, and he was into like rock music, which when we were at school, you only learnt classical music. Like there was no rock music in school, so you just learnt all the classics. But he was into, the Kinks and like kind of really cool stuff that, was not cool when you were at school, but because they didn't teach it. And so I had lessons with him. And then I did go to night school for a while. I tried to learn classical guitar, but I didn't like it very much because I didn't like having to, the teacher was like, you have to put your foot on this stool and your hand has to be, I didn't like it. I didn't like the formality of it. I was like, no, you just got to freak out, like be free on the thing. So, yeah, but...
I love that you had a pottery class in school. That's cool.
That's good. That's growing up in Wales. Yeah, it was great. Pottery was.
And not only that, the pottery teacher ended up being your music teacher
yeah,
too. That's pretty sweet.
He was a great guy, actually. Yeah, I really liked him. Yeah, so yeah, that's good. So they were my early things in the music.
So it sounds like you played music with your family. Like your dad introduced you to a bunch of music too. So like, was music kind of like not just like your family, but that was like spread across other houses too, like your cousins or other people too. Like how widely was the music?
Yeah, because you know how kids often rebel against what their parents are into. It almost doesn't matter what they're into. You just want to rebel against it because you don't like it, right, and whatever, because they're doing it. Well, for me, when I was young, I really didn't like music at all because my dad played it all the time. There was always music in the house. There was always people rehearsing. It was like so annoying. Like, you know what I mean? You walk in the house and there's a load of musicians in the living room playing, and it was just annoying, when you're a kid. So I didn't like music till I was around about 12 or something like that, myself, 12, maybe 14 or somewhere around there, where I actually really started to play. And then I really got into it. Yeah, but before, I didn't like music very much. Not especially to play, like I didn't mind listening to it, but I saw it as something that wasn't very cool, So, but then when I got into it, my dad was very encouraging. Like, as I said, he would take us to his gigs. And I can remember one time my dad took me and my brother to a recording studio, and I would go with him quite a bit to recording studios later. But this was just me and my brother, and we set up all our gear, and then he sat in the room and he said, "Okay, so play your songs," and I was trying to write songs then, and then he would teach us how to perform. When we were kids, he would teach us about stage presence and where to look and how to move and all this, as kids, and it was really, when I look back now, I'm like, that was so cool that he did that, because it is an art, performing. You often see people, don't you, you think they had a charisma bypass operation just after their birth, like, what the hell happened there, but like, people who can really perform,
you don't think about it so much. Like, it's hard to be conscious of like what you look like while you're trying to focus on playing your song. Yeah. Like, it is like another thing, especially if you're singing and playing at the same time. Yeah. You're trying to do two things at once that kind of work together, but also don't. No. And then you're also at the same time thinking about what other people are seeing and changing yourself based on that. Like, I don't want to look like I'm dead. I don't want to look like a statue. I'm not in a wax museum here. I got to actually move. Got to look around. Yeah. And there's that's not taught very much. Like, I only know of a couple of places that have seen kids play around here consistently, and this was before World's End. But it was usually things like music in the park or stuff like that. They'd have, we actually gave it our own name. We used to call it it was called the emerging artist, but we renamed it the hemorrhaging artist. And so we'd always have, it was usually someone like between the age of like 12 and 20, typically. And no one had ever taught them that you look like you don't want to be here. Your entire body is like curling up into itself and doesn't want to be seen by anybody. Like, you're really out of your zone and you look like it. You're not supposed to look like that. You're supposed to look like you're having fun. You're supposed to have a bit of presence and own the area.
Unless you're in Joy Division, then you can look miserable.
I've actually not sure what that is, but it sounds like something that I kind of want to go check out now.
Yeah.
What is Joy Division?
Remember they did that song, Love will tear us apart again. Very depressed. And poor guy, he actually committed suicide, the singer, in the end. So it wasn't a very sad, it wasn't a very happy thing. Joy Division wasn't really. Anyway, we digress.
Sounds like the worst name for a band.
Yeah, it was
for given their reputation.
They were a great band, but a real troubled man, the singer, bless him. Yeah, but so that was really nice to have that kind of help when you were a kid, being taught that kind of stuff. And some of those things, because it's really intimidating to stand in front of a load of people and perform. Like, if you've never done it before, like, you don't really know, but it really is a very scary thing, even when you've done it a lot of times, it's still kind of stressful. Mm-hmm. But I can remember one of the things he said is, when you go on stage, you should, unless you're in a glam band or whatever, but he said you should always dress to look slightly different than the audience that you're playing to, but never so different that you just look ridiculous. Like,
you're not going to show up to a bar in a tuxedo.
But at the same time, you don't want to just show up to the bar in your jeans and your T-shirt and just look the same as everyone else, right? So that's something like...
It's funny. That's most of the bands I see around here.
Yeah, I know. And that's one of the things that is really annoying. Like, if you see us, any band I've ever been in, we've never done that. You know what I mean? Because I just don't think it's a good way to be. Like, you get on a stage to perform, that's what you're meant to be there for. That's how I think of it anyway. So that was a really good thing. So, in other words, you don't want to look ridiculous unless you do want to look ridiculous. If you're the Darkness or something, it's like, you want to look like that. You want to look ridiculous. But and then the other thing that combats, these, you might have heard this before from other people, but just imagine the whole crowd sitting on the toilet in front of you.
I like that better than imagining them naked.
Yeah. But my dad used to say that to us. Just imagine everyone sitting in front of you having a crap, like, you know what I mean? And then it really takes away the whole thing that they're any different to you, you know what I mean? And that was really good.
Funny thing now is that with all these live streams, that probably is the case.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, and then the last one that I can remember was that he used to say, it's very hard to look everyone in the eye when you're playing because it's very intimidating to do that. So he said if you look just above people's heads, it looks like you're looking at everybody, and you're making kind of contact from the audience point of view, but it's nowhere near as intimidating as actually having a look in everyone's faces, right? And these are things that I've never forgotten, you know, like they're really helpful things about performing that, you know, I learned when I was that young, you know, with him actually teaching us stuff like that, you know.
How long did it take him to teach you that?
Well, that, like, some of these things have been done over a period of time, but that one time in the studio, that one time was just like probably 3 or 4 hours that we were there, you know, he just, you know, we just sang some songs and he taught us about writing songs and about hooks in songs and, you know, structure of songs, all this kind of stuff. So that was really helpful as well, you know, to have that. I think there's not enough mentoring of the arts, really. You know, there's in certain traditions of music, like for instance in bluegrass music, the kids sit in with the maestros backstage or after the gig or whatever, and they learn all the jigs and the reels and stuff from the masters, right? And so there's this dissemination of the art and the craft, and there's tunes and all that kind of stuff. But often that doesn't happen much in modern music. You know, kids don't have anyone to mentor them in these kinds of things, so they're just trying to find it out on their own, you know. But it is an important thing, especially with schools now not even having music or performing arts in the things, you know. Like, where do you learn that, you know?
Yeah, if there's no place to perform, you can't even go and be bad somewhere.
No.
Like, you can play in your bedroom, but you got to go and practice that somewhere.
Yeah.
If you don't even have, like, a school
Yeah.
band or something like that to go and practice in, like,
Exactly,
it's pretty hard to
yeah.
get any good at it.
And you have to really suck for quite a long time before you get good, you know. I mean, there's some kids who are just naturally really good, but not many. You know, most of them are. I mean, you know, even like someone like Justin Bieber, he's an incredible artist. But I mean, when you see him as a young child, he wasn't always as good as he is now. You know, he's learned how to be that good, right? So, you know.
There was this kid that I found on YouTube. His name is Sangha Jung. He was Korean, and he would play just by himself on his guitar.
Yeah.
And I swear he sounded like 3 guitarists.
Wow.
And he would just sit there, just relaxed, playing his acoustic guitar. There was this one song I remember very vividly. It was a Beatles medley. It was like 4 songs, and he would just go between them all. And he would be playing the bass line, the melody line, and the rhythm on one acoustic guitar.
Wow.
All at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, you'd see, like, his hands would be doing, like, 2 completely different lines between, like, the 6 strings. Nothing special about the guitar. He was just really, really good. And he looked like he was just, like, sitting in, I don't know, like he may as well have been counting pogs. Like, he was so relaxed. And he's just walking up and down this entire guitar like nobody's business. I'm like, I have no business on a guitar after seeing that.
No.
That was the one thing. It's like, on one side, it's like, oh, cool, he can do that, then maybe I can too. And then the other side was like, he can do that? There's no way in hell I could do that.
No. And that's... isn't YouTube hard like that? You know, just when you think you're good, you look, there's a little 8-year-old kid who's like way better than you.
That's always the case. There's always somebody better and younger. Always, and no matter what.
Yeah. Well, I heard a good quote from Buddy Guy. He had he was in his club, and this young lad got up to play, and he blew everyone away with his virtuoso guitar playing, you know, just a young kid, and everyone was going crazy. And then Buddy Guy gets up on the stage after him to play, and he said, he was good, he just ain't had enough years. And I was like, yeah, there is something about when you see someone who's been doing it all their life, you know what I mean, here, and it's not just learning it in the bedroom. There's something more that comes with just being seasoned of doing it a lot, you know.
Well, the cool thing is if they are that good, that young, like they got a leg up on.
It'll come. Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
Some musicians get kind of threatened by that, and I know I had a few friends who were probably, I don't know, they were okay, like cafe musicians. Didn't really push themselves too hard, like to really further their craft. Like they were fine, but they would get threatened, or they'd feel threatened by like these young, not prodigies, but younger kids who just started sooner and worked at it more consistently and were better. Right, and they're like, we're 3 years younger. They're like, oh man, I can't believe how good these young kids are. But and they would stop because they'd see too many of these young kids doing so well. I'm like, why are you annoyed by that? They're producing awesome work that you get to listen to and enjoy. Like, I'm not offended by the Beatles being really, really good.
Oh, yeah.
Why would you be offended by that? They made some pretty cool stuff and we get to hang out and listen to. Like, that's awesome. Why would you get upset by a young kid being so good at the stuff so young? That's just awesome. It just means more cool art for everyone to listen to.
Yeah, so
but
true.
If it is your personal craft, I suppose it's a little bit closer to your heart, so it might be a little harder to take in.
Yeah, but I think it's good to celebrate other people's talent and stuff. You know what I mean? I mean, yes, I think what I've seen, if I've seen someone who's like so good, and you go and watch them, and oh my God, you either want to give up. That's the first response, or you say, well, you go home and you try and do something that they were doing and learn from it, right? You know. So that's how, because I've taught a lot of children how to play guitar, right? And you learn so much from the kids who you're teaching, you know, like who can't hardly play. You know, you're like, oh, I never thought of doing it like that before, or whatever it is, you know. So I think you got to have an attitude where you just, you know, you want to learn from people, right? And if you're threatened by it, probably need a bit of therapy, don't you, really? You know, because kids are awesome. Like, you know what I mean? You should celebrate kids, you know, and their goodness, you know. That's how I look at it. You know? Even though it does annoy you, they're way better than you.
Okay, so you gave me this, which I don't really know how I'm going to listen to it because I actually don't have anything that I can put a CD into. So I have to figure that one out. But I'm resourceful. But anyways, you have this album with your dad.
Yeah.
And you've also done a bunch of not only shows but tours, I think, and an album with Aaron, your son.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So there's this whole like generational thing of like family musicians like playing together, which I think is pretty sweet.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many of your kids play music?
I think all of them I have 7 kids and they're all got some musicality, but some of them take it more serious than others. So there's a few that kind of really get into it more. Yeah, but they all can play stuff, you know. So
okay.
Yeah.
What did Aaron start on? Did he start on harp?
Oh, Aaron. So Aaron started on the drums.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
He learned to play the drums first, and then he was playing Zelda, you know, the computer game. And then he heard this sound that he really liked. I think he was around about 8 or 9 or something, and that happened to be the harp, the Celtic harp, you know. And he didn't know what it was because he was just a kid. So he tried to find it on the internet, and then he found this, you know, realized it was a harp, and then he became fascinated with the Celtic harp, and started this kind of online relationship with this guy who was a harp builder and a harp player. He's sadly passed on now, but my son, as a young lad, kind of started dialoguing with him and that, you know what I mean, because he had these YouTube videos and stuff about it, and they got fascinated with the whole thing of building harps and playing the harp from this guy who he'd never met, just only online, you know, like this. And then one thing led on to the next. It's a long story, but now he builds harps himself and plays as well. You know, so yeah, it's pretty cool. So he was inspired as a child, you know, to do that, and then I think it's interesting. I think musical instruments kind of call you. You know what I mean? Like, it's a funny, like, people say, "Oh, I chose to play the guitar," but I think there's something. There's like a mystical kind of a thing about, like, in town here we have dear Sherman Doucet, the harmonica player, Sherman.
I don't think I know him. No.
So he's a wonderful man and plays the harmonica so well. And I asked him, "How did you get into the harmonica?" And he said, "I was walking down an alleyway and I found a harmonica in the alleyway and I just started playing it. It felt like it was calling me my name to play it, And I was like, and I've heard that a lot, that kind of idea, that this is how it happens, There's just something about it that draws you in and captivates you, and then you can't stop, So yeah, me and Aaron have thankfully done quite a lot of playing together. We recorded a record together as well of our stuff, and recently we did some videos together in Vernon.
I think you won a contest a couple of years ago, didn't you? Like to do a video
Yeah,
together?
we've won a few things. Yeah, it's good. Yeah,
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really nice to be able to do it together, and that music is quite different to what I would normally play, because the Celtic harp is somewhat limited to what you can do on it because of you can't play in all keys, and you can't play all the chromatic scales, so it's quite difficult to pick music that works for the Celtic harp. So it was really good for me to learn that and try and pick songs that you can, because sometimes I come with a song and I say, "Oh, this is a great song," and he goes, "A lovely song, but I can't play it on this harp because you can't change the levers quick enough to get all the chords."
Okay, so what is the harp's tuning then? Because it's not all 12 notes in a scale.
Well,
an octave.
I'm not exactly sure all of that, but I think it's tuned in E flat. I think the harp itself, and then the levers give you quite a number of keys, but not all of the keys. So not all the flat keys and all that kind of stuff are on the harp. So,
interesting.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. You'd have to get him to come in and talk about that sometime.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard for reasons similar to that apparently I think it's like more than this statistic was told to me like 9 years ago, but I heard that more than 90% of country music is written in the key of G.
Right. Yeah.
Because that's the open tuning of a banjo.
Yeah.
It's like this one instrument screwed over an entire genre.
Yeah,
It's like, all right,
D,
if you can't sing in G, you can't do country. That's it.
Yeah, it's true. Like fiddle, banjo, mandolin, they all sound good in the key of G or D, A at a stretch. But yeah, once you get past that, you're into, this is terrible. Especially on a banjo, unless you're really good, But no, that's true. There's a lot of truth in that, Yeah. Yeah, but that record that we done there, I was going to tell you about that, because what happened with this is when this awful pandemic things happened, this time last year or whatever, and everyone went into this lockdown and all that kind of stuff. My dad, like me, is a musician, and I knew that he's actually retired from performing now. He still plays, but not live anymore. But I knew he'd go crazy if we didn't do something, creative together, because so I reached out to him and I said, well, why don't we just write some songs together? And it'll be a way of keeping our kind of sanity in all this isolation and stuff, because at that time we didn't know where it would all go or anything, So.
When was this again?
So this was a year ago now.
It's like
at the beginning,
a month or so in.
Yeah. It was right at the beginning of when we didn't really know what was going on. So we agreed to write some songs by recording a few ideas on our phones, sending them back and forth across the internet.
It's so great how easy that is to do.
Yeah.
Now.
And so we came up with a couple of songs to start with, and then we both have little recording studios at home, so we recorded them and whatever, and then 2 songs went to 4, and then we ended up with 14 songs that we wrote together.
Wait, how many are on here?
Over a year.
There's 14 songs on here.
Yeah. And so then...
That's a big album, actually.
Kenny Blues Boss played piano on it, who's a great piano player in town here, and lots of some other friends. And then my kids played on it as well. Some of them played different instruments and stuff as well. and it became a real family affair, you know. So it started off as something to try and keep us sane, but it ended up as a whole record, you know. And it's hard to say because it's our own thing, but we're so proud of it. It sounds so good, you know, and the songs are really strong on there. And it was the first time that I had a chance to actually collaborate with my dad in the writing of songs, you know. And my dad is he wouldn't say this himself, but he's, you know, won many awards for his songwriting in the UK, you know, and he's been signed to major labels and all that kind of stuff when he was younger, and so it was a real honour for me to even, you know, I was a bit scared actually to going into it thinking, well, you know, he's such a seasoned kind of writer, how is this going to work, you know? But
that's pretty modest of you, because I know how many records have you done? Do you have you kept track?
No, I don't know. Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah, I played on a lot and recorded quite a few. Yeah, no, but I think there is a respect there for people who can write good songs. You know, I mean, yeah, I have written a few myself, but yeah, it was a really great experience to do that with my dad, and you know, it's like a legacy really now. You know, I look back at it and go, wow, it's just so good to be able to do that.
Yeah, songwriting like with someone else that's pretty special, because like it's not like writing something like in prose, because there's rhythm to it. There's like an additional layer of like emotional connection you can have while hearing these words, and not only words, but you're also writing the music itself as well. So like you're writing lots of different layers, and it's kind of a collision of like hearts, really.
Right.
Because like once you become a really seasoned songwriter, you're not really overthinking it too much. Like you've kind of been through this motion a few times before, and it's always different in every way.
Right.
But you're really combining like two people's essence in that time of life together. So it's like there's a special element that's added into it.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. Especially if the song is more personal. You know, sometimes some of the songs on this record are definitely contrived. They're just ideas, fun ideas, and they're fictional. You know, and so in that sense, you're trying to make it funny or, you know, or humorous or whatever. You know, it's not really the same as putting your heart into it. But there's other ones that definitely are a bit more like that, where it's, you know, like there's one on there called It's Hard to Make a Crust, it's called.
I keep on looking at that one. Like, I want to know. Oh, and also, just like Muddy Waters said, that's a cool thing. That's a cool song name, too.
So I was thinking about, you know, like the majority of people that I know are kind of like working class kind of people who are just living from week to week or month to month, whatever, you know. I mean, and that's the majority of people are kind of like that. And I was thinking, in England
Evan, do you mind grabbing those other ones and let's
in
dig
England
into
we have
those.
a saying that says, oh bless you, they say
it's getting dry in here.
It's so hard to make a living. It's like it's hard to make a crust, you know, because bread is called money. Money is bread in England. It's a slang word for bread.
Right, breadwinner.
Yes. So money is bread. So in England, there's also a phrase that says it's hard to make a crust, let alone the whole slice. It's like you can't even make a crust, you know. That's, we don't have that saying in Canada, but
now I'm I love song names or songs that have like different layers into them like that.
Yeah,
I like those a lot. Like, okay, there's I'm going to go off on a slight tangent here, and also I'm thinking about this because of Muddy Waters. I didn't know who Muddy Waters was, but thank you to Foo Fighters, I do a little bit, just a little tiny bit. There's an album that they did called Sonic Highways. Are you familiar with it?
I don't know that record now, but
okay, it's a really cool concept. I love like whenever people do like mixtures of different art forms. So they did a really cool one. They made a TV show, where it's 8 songs, 8 episodes.
Yeah,
and it's one season. That's it. They went to 8 different iconic cities in the U.S. that are all known for the music scenes. And episode 1 is in Chicago. And so what they do is they spend a week in the city. In the first 6 days, they're in the studio and they're writing the music and they're writing songs, or a song, and they're recording it in like a studio that's really well known in that city for
Okay.
some historical,
Yeah, right.
like musical
So
thing,
cool.
whatever. But they're also doing interviews with people who are significant artists in that city for what that city's known for. So Chicago,
Yeah,
blues.
yeah.
So they're talking about Muddy Waters a lot.
Yeah, right.
And there's a lot of different people that are up and they're being interviewed, and like it's cutting back and forth between like the interviews and like them in the studio, like trying to figure out and write and record the stuff.
Yeah.
And then on the last night, Dave Grohl, the frontman, he'll take like a transcript of those interviews and take pieces of it and write the lyrics from the interviews.
Wow, that's
and
cool.
then he records the lyrics on the last day, and then they actually perform at the end of the episode. So you've heard all these interviews, and then they play the song, and the whole song you're just hearing the episode that you just watched for the last
that's so
45
great.
minutes. It's an awesome idea.
Yeah,
I
that's
actually
so good.
only watched the first episode. And I need to go back and find where I have it in my hard drive to go and watch the rest of it. But I've listened to the whole album tons of times.
Yeah.
And it's so brilliant. But like you can hear all these different layers because like you listen to the songs, like this is a great song.
Yeah, right.
And like one of the lyrics in there is like wash them in the muddy water.
Right, yeah.
And it's like if you didn't know that what they're talking about, you'd be like, oh, okay, that's a cool lyric. But then like
Yeah,
there's all
yeah.
this other stuff that they've been talking about the whole
Yeah,
episode.
yeah.
It's like there are so many layers in here. It's like
Yeah.
mixing all these different art forms together. Like it just adds so much
Yeah.
more interest, and like you almost feel like personally invested in it
Yeah,
at this
right,
point. It's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
this is awesome.
That's
it's like
funny.
mixing
Yeah,
in like
I
a
like that.
saying or even
Yeah.
if it's like a cultural reference and then
Yeah.
playing it in a way that maybe ties into something else that may be like significant based
Yeah,
on where
right.
that cultural reference came from for the musical history.
Right, yeah.
It's just adding layer after layer after
love
layer.
that.
It's like that is true art form, really.
I like that.
It's so
Well-
much more interesting to listen to than just a song that you have no idea where it came from.
Yeah. It's funny that you should mention that because that song on that record, like Muddy Waters said, that comes from a line where my dad sent over these ideas for this song, and the lyric was, "I've got my mojo back. It's been away too long, and it's I've got my mojo back," just like Muddy Waters said, right? So one of Muddy Waters' famous songs is "I've got my mojo working," right, which is one of Muddy Waters' very famous songs. So that's where that. So it's a similar thing in some ways because it was just. Like a bit of a play on words, you know. People say, "I got my mojo back," so he's saying, "I got my mojo back," just like Muddy Waters said. And then I said to him, "Well, why don't we make the theme about a woman blues singer? And you've met this woman who plays the blues, and she's given you your mojo back, like you know, like and so that's where that idea came from, you know. So
Well, that's
that
a
was
cool
that's the
thought.
way the. It was great. The collaboration was really good, you know, going back and forth with ideas, and then we'd write a bit more and change some. Oh, I don't like that, you know, whatever. It was really kind of cool. It was a long process though because we had to do it over the internet, you know, and
Where's your dad?
he's in just outside London, a place called Colchester,
Okay.
in the UK. Yeah, so yeah, that's the other thing. It was made over the Atlantic, you know, so. He was there, I was here. Even that photo on the front is not. We're not actually together.
Yeah, I was just thinking like that's actually kind of cool. Like you got this little like this guitar
Yeah.
neck split between the two
Yeah,
of you.
yeah.
That's like another little
Everything
little
about
small
it was done separate. We
Easter
did
egg.
a video for it, and that's all green screened as well. You know, like he's there, I'm here. You know, so we just tried to make it look like we're in the same place.
Last year, somebody from the theater who plays in the band, and like some of the bandmates are they're in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And he was asking me like, how are we gonna do a music video with them there and
Yeah.
I'm here, or like some were here, some were there.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, there's a lot of ways you can do it, but yeah, that's pretty cool. Like you actually made it happen. Man, I'm so excited to listen to this thing.
Yeah.
I gotta figure
yeah,
out how
it's
I'm gonna
fun.
listen
Yeah.
to it. I don't know how I'm
You
gonna
can
fit this
get it
into a
online
USB
as
port.
well. We made some CDs because, like, it's funny. I contacted the CBC Blues show, you know, from Edmonton, and they said, "Oh, we don't really do anything online. You have to send us a hard copy of a recording." So I was like, "Yeah, that's the blues." What the heck is downloading music? So yeah, it's funny. So we did make a short run, but most people download music now.
Well, I like having a physical copy, even if it's like to look at, because like
Yeah.
something like this, I know what's going to happen is I'm going to find a way to digitize this somehow. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to get it. someone's old dusty CD player somewhere is going to work. Anyways, I'm going to get this thing onto my computer, and then this is going to be on my, I have like a very slowly like growing little like wall shelf of like musical, artistic paraphernalia, things that like I look at and like, this is a cool physical item to have. I like this kind of stuff. It's fun. And actually that's one of the draws I have to records.
Yeah,
I have one of the worst record players you can find. I bought it brand new, and it's got built-in speakers that are garbage. And if you plug it in, you can actually hear the sound of the needle on the record. So you still have to like crank the external speakers enough to overpower that. So like, man, this thing is awful. I get why they have those little plastic covers that like you'd pull down, because this is a noisy little piece of metal.
You can't hear that, yeah.
Yeah. But I like that though, because you have to actually go to the effort of putting on this thing, moving the needle over, hitting, letting it play, letting it spin. And my favorite thing is I got to sit back and just enjoy the experience of letting it go in the order that the artist decided it was going to be. There's no shuffle.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And if I want to hear the end of it, I got to stand up, go over, move the needle, pick it up, flip it over, and put it back in. Like, it's kind of like a little experience. And I definitely like to be doing that when I'm not entirely sober.
It is funny because you do, when you make something like this, you do spend time thinking about the order of all the songs and how they flow together and stuff, but of course then they go on shuffle, or people just only download one song or whatever it is, so yeah, it's nice to hear a whole thing.
It is. It's cool because like you're hearing this journey, especially because like an album like this, I'm excited to hear how it flows in the order that you made it.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah, well, we enjoyed doing it, I tell you. It's great.
Have you seen anyone doing something as a way of like performing music that you thought, oh, that's actually pretty good use of all this madness going on? Like, there's been people who have written, like, you wrote an album with your dad across the Atlantic. You made videos for it.
Yeah.
Were those ideas you just kind of like came up with in conversation, or like this other person did it, let's try that too? Yeah,
no, the time. It was so early on in the pandemic that we came up with the idea that I think a lot of people had similar ideas all at the same time, right? Because we had to find a way to do stuff. And my dad was in a demographic age-wise where he wasn't allowed out of the house, you know what I mean?
Oh, right, yeah.
So he had to stay in, And we just came up with it. I think it's a bit of a testament, isn't it, to the human spirit, in the sense that I remember watching some footage of a saxophone player in Italy, and he's on a balcony, and then further down the street there's someone on the piano and whatever, and they're like, they're not allowed to be with each other. Was that like those tall apartment buildings, or the white buildings that are kind of like facing each other? Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah. And wasn't there a singer that joined them at some point? Yeah, I saw that. That was awesome. That was like when like there's no one in the streets. Everyone's like, is coronavirus going to kill us all? Like, what's going on here? Yeah. That was awesome. I think I watched that a couple of times. Yeah. So that would be one of those kind of things. It was really special, Yeah. I think people find a way, to I think after all this pandemic is, we can get back to doing stuff together again. I think creativity will explode. I like that you said doing stuff together again instead of back to normal. I'm kind of tired of hearing back to normal. That's not happening. No. We've all been wrecked by some way, shape, or form. It's not. There's no normal anymore. It's all like, okay, let's just get back together. How about that? I'll settle for that. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah. Hopefully we'll learn some stuff out through all of this, and it won't be like normal. It's almost scary to think of people getting back to just acting like nothing happened. Especially when people have paid a pretty heavy toll. In our own, probably like everyone's families, there's been deaths. In our own family, and you can't go at the funeral. And, there's 15 people allowed to go to honour someone who's lived a beautiful life, and there's only 15 people allowed to go there. I had some dear friends who's a good friend of yours as well. I won't mention their name, but their wife passed away recently, and they literally had to have the funeral sitting in their living room. on a Zoom meeting and stuff like, these are heavy things, right, that people have suffered, and to say, oh, we're going to go back to normal is kind of almost an insult to the fact that people have paid a heavy cost, in this time,
Yeah, that's a good thing to bring up, actually.
Yeah, so, I hope we do learn stuff, but it'd be so good to go to a gig, wouldn't it?
Yeah, just getting sweaty and disgusting with like a bunch of other drunk people pushing you over into someone else's table and spilling the beer, and you get into a fight, and then you end up being friends outside in the smoke pit.
Are you looking at my missus? No.
Yeah, I thought she was mine. What are you doing with her? Man, I've had some of the weirdest conversations in smoke pits.
Yeah.
They're so much fun.
Well, that's a funny thing, because that brought back a memory, right? I went to see the Campbell Brothers. Do you know? I don't know if you know the Campbell Brothers, but they are just like crazy good. Pedal steel guitar players, old guys, and they played this music called sacred steel music, right? So they started in the church, and they do these incredible gigs, like whatever, all over the place. Anyway, so Robert Randolph comes from that tradition. I don't know if you know Robert Randolph, but he comes from that tradition of music. So the Campbell Brothers would be his mentors, really. Anyway, so talking about the smoke pit, I'm outside at half time at the gig, and I'm chatting with this guy, and he tries to talk to me. He says he starts to say something like, "Isn't that an incredible gig?" or something, and he bursts into tears, right, as he's trying to tell me. And I burst into tears as well, right? And there were two complete strangers standing in the middle of the street in Vancouver, crying our eyes out, because this music is so incredible, you know what I mean? And we just can't even put it into words, And it was like such a beautiful moment, I don't know who the heck that guy was, and but it was like we were both so moved by this music, I want that again.
It's got such a weird effect. Like, music is one of those things, like it's definitely been said way better than I ever can say, like what it does to people. But I was actually reminded yesterday, with a mutual friend of ours who was, we were kind of like swapping different songs that we really loved and connected with, written by Bon Iver.
Yeah.
And the one that he showed me was, I don't know how big the band is. I think it's like 7 or 8 people now. Like, it used to be just him, and then it kind of got ridiculously famous, and it's absolutely deserved all around. And he did this piece where it's all a cappella. It's a song called Heavenly Father, and they performed it in the Sydney Opera House. Oh, and it's just the 7 or 8 of them, or however many there are, standing around this microphone singing it. And oh my God, it was so good. But it made me feel like I'd never heard the song before. First time ever hearing it. And I'm just sitting there watching and listening in awe of, like, this is incredible. I was predisposed to liking it because I like Bon Iver as an artist.
Yeah.
But you hear the song for the first time and it moves you. It's like, oh my goodness, music really does this.
That's so beautiful. That's what I miss about, seeing people live and stuff, that when you're like, oh my goodness, I felt like I went to heaven there for a moment, whatever. You can't get that online, can you, really? It doesn't really work the same way,
Okay, I have watched shows that were, like, recorded.
I've got to do the...
Nice. I love that. I love that. That's actually, that was told, like, you got to open the show up like that. By, unfortunately, one of the podcasts I was really looking forward to, and is great, and it was the worst video. Oh. I don't know what I did wrong. I did something wrong, and it looked like stop motion the whole time.
Oh, no.
Which sucks. But anyways, it was Ryan Don.
Oh, well, he's ugly sod anyway, and it doesn't really matter. I can say that because I really like Ryan.
Oh man, that was fun.
No, he's a good man.
He's pretty cool. I was so excited for that, and also I was really pleasantly surprised by, like, how much more he does and is into than I ever thought.
Yeah,
I didn't know he ran a farm.
Oh yeah.
Well, now he runs a farm anyway.
He's a very good performer in his own right, Ryan. I played on his record years ago, and I remember, it's funny, I heard it on the radio one day, and I'm like, that guitar player sounds just like me, right? And I didn't know that it was Ryan, right? Because it was on the radio, because you don't think of him as being on the radio anymore.
Wait, now? When was this?
It's a couple of years ago. I heard it on the radio, you know. It was
cool.
a record we did some time ago. Yeah, and then at the end he goes, "That's Ryan Don." I'm like, "Oh, it was me." That was funny. Anyway, what were you saying about
I was just talking.
experiences
Like I've seen like recordings and of shows that they definitely like bring me to, like, it's not the same as being there in person.
Yeah.
But in some ways, it's almost better because I'm not going to be annoyed by somebody singing horribly or having a conversation loudly right there,
Right,
ruining
yeah.
the experience for me in person. But you know, sometimes that kind of makes it more of a
Yeah.
interesting experience. But
Yeah.
I've definitely had times like I've been sitting, listening and watching, or just listening or whatever, to like some kind of concert, and it really takes you to a different
Right,
place. Like
okay, yeah,
music is pretty
yeah.
powerful that way.
Yeah, that's true.
There's
yeah.
like a couple of concerts that one of them, my favorite one, not my favorite one, one of my favorite ones I was introduced to very early on. It was like one of the first ever like live concerts
Yeah.
that I watched like the whole DVD of.
Right.
I then ripped the DVD,
Yeah.
and I still have it. Was John Mayer's "Where the Light Is" from 2007
Yeah, yeah.
in the Nokia Theater in LA, and it's like it's a concert split into three sections. The first one is just all acoustic.
Yeah.
Second one is the blues trio.
Yeah.
And then the third one is the pop band.
Yeah,
So it's
right.
like three concerts in one,
Yeah.
and every single song on there is flawless.
Yeah.
Like, not that it was perfectly performed, but that it was so good that you couldn't really make it better.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was so good. So like every time I've listened to that whole thing, I've shared it with a lot of people.
Yeah,
And
no, he's
every
just-
time I listen to it, I was like, man, I'm brought back to a place.
He's
Just listen to
a
it.
special artist, and good band as well.
Mm-hmm.
Good Welsh boy on the bass. That's what it is.
Pino?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tall dude. He's
Yeah.
really tall.
Yeah. He's one of Wales's best exports. That and the sheep. Dear.
Yeah, I won't get into that, but
That's not good.
for similar New Zealand jokes. But
Yeah.
apparently there are like, what, 37 million sheep to like 3 or 4 million
Yeah.
people, or maybe it's
Yeah.
5 million or people or something like that. It's like an
Yeah.
outlandish ratio.
I remember playing in New Zealand years ago, and I remember the one guy I was with, he said, "So where's your sheep?" You know, to the and he's like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I heard that there was like 3 sheep to every person or something." Yeah, it doesn't mean that every person owns 3 sheep.
It's a couple of greedy fellas that got a few thousand. Okay, wait. So how many countries have you played in, or do you keep track?
Oh dear. Yeah, I mean, I'm quite fortunate that I've travelled. I've been on 5 different continents and played music. You know, like so travelled all over the world really.
So which one's missing, aside from Antarctica?
Yeah, so yeah, I haven't been in South America. I've never played down there. So
Have you been there though?
no.
Oh, okay. I've only been to Central America. I
Yeah,
haven't
so
been
I've
down
never
there. I've
been
heard
down
amazing
there.
stuff about it.
Yeah, but so yeah, I got to travel quite a bit. You know, when I was younger, I haven't done quite so much lately, but yeah, that's a hard part of musicianship. Really, is the traveling part. You know, like when you travel a lot and you're away. Sometimes you'd be away for like 6 weeks or something, and you come back and you know it's hard because the family had all moved on really, and you're in your glory somewhere in some venue where no one really even knows you. You know, and they think they do, and then you get home and you have to kind of try and reintegrate into a family that's kind of your wife's done everything. In my case, you know what I mean, and it was hard, you know. So it was great to be able to travel, but it also pays a heavy toll on you, I think. It did for me anyway.
Yeah, I suppose that's a good reason to do it when you're young, single, and
Yeah,
full of dumb ideas.
Or I think it'd be great to do it if you were very successful and you made huge money. You know what I mean? You could
Bring the
come
family
back.
along.
Yeah, then you just say, okay, well, we made a few million and it was worth it, you know. But when you come home and you're just breaking even all the time, it's not really great, you know. So yeah, I really admire people who can just keep traveling like that. I mean, I think we both have friends like that who are, you think, how do you do it? You know, you just keep on and on and on and on, traveling like this, you know. It's very difficult to do.
Yeah. Some people, they really find the process gives them what they need in order to keep going.
Yeah, yeah. But, I mean, yeah, I do enjoy traveling, but, yeah, I mean, let's face it, none of us have done it for so long now. I can't even remember. Yeah. I'd like to travel to Abbotsford, but I'm not allowed.
Man, the stuff we say is normal right now, or just like casually, is just so ridiculous to think about like a year and a half ago.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah.
We won't go there. It's a hard one to figure out, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I just try and do what I can to look after other people as well as myself, you know. That's how I look at it, you know.
Well, then you do things like adding to our list of things to go and get life from and get inspiration from and find solace in. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah.
I know a lot of people talked about, what are you going to do with all your time off at home?
Yeah.
What, you gonna go learn a new skill? I know that I started, and I didn't really do too well at it. I started whenever ruling the throne, I tried practicing sign language. And
cool.
I kept on forgetting, and after a while I was like, okay, well I can say orange and couch and drawer and a couple of things like that, but like nothing even close to actually even expressing a thought. But,
that's funny. Yeah. Would be handy though, especially with my hearing. It would be really good for you.
Yeah, with the amount of shows you've done, how's your hearing?
What? Yeah, that's not good. My hearing's not very good. Yeah, I have to wear hearing aids now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, I'm meant to. I don't wear them all the time, but yeah, meant to. I went for the test, and the audiologist said, "How on earth do you hear anything with that?" So read your lips. It's really hard when you got these masks on.
Oh man, that's ruined it for so many people.
It's terrible.
I can barely understand lyrics.
No, exactly.
And then when someone's talking to me in a loud room, I'm relying on reading their lips for like half of it.
It's not just me, it's you as well, yeah, see? Yeah, it's horrible. You go to the bank and they're behind that big screen and that, you know, they're like...
With the mask on, and you got your mask on, you're like, okay, hang on a second. Either I got to write this down and pass a note back and forth, or something's got to go.
You know, it's funny, because the other day I was at the bank, and they got the big screen, there's a little hole in the bottom, and me and the clerk are both like talking to each other with our masks off through it was so ridiculous. I was like, this is stupid. Like, neither of us could hear each other. Oh dear. Yeah.
Well, Dave Moore, he was doing the whole RS Loops thing. I think he still is now.
Yeah.
And he was installing those at like libraries and airports and places like just like that, like where someone's got a hearing aid. Maybe that's all they got. They can't use their ears at all, like for nothing. Like they're leagues like beyond like where you're at. Like it's like AC/DC lead singer level. Or like if you go on another tour, you're deaf forever. That's it. And they stand in that little square and like they can pipe it straight into their hearing aid. Like that's pretty cool. But like we almost need that now, just as a general rule.
Be good, wouldn't it? Yeah. COVID earplug things that.
Well, everyone's got the little wireless earbuds. You just like go up to the counter, like pair earbuds, and then just talk to each other with those.
That's a good idea. You could make some serious money with that idea.
And then you forget to unpair it and you leave, and it's like, who's talking to me right now? What the hell's going on? And the next person in line is like, I can't hear you. It's like, I'm talking. I can't hear you. The other person back there is like, shut up.
You could pair it with like vaccinations, couldn't you? You get your vaccine and then you get your earplugs as well.
If you could figure out a way to make that work, that'd actually be pretty funny. But then it would actually be useful, and people would start using it.
I know, it's crazy. Yeah.
Well, hey, this has been really fun. We're at an hour and 23 now.
Oh my goodness!
What do you say we're
wrapping it up? There.
Wrap it up. Let's get these earmuffs off. You want to go to the still image, then we'll smash the kill it all button.